Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar where we're going to update you on the FLAIR and STATIC trials. We're really excited to have this opportunity to bring this information to you to help you with your decision making in the future. Can I begin by just saying thank you to the pharmaceutical companies who are supporting us? AbbVie, AstraZeneca, B1, Lilly. We're indebted to them for the financial support they provided towards the costs of CLL Support webinars. They've had no input into the content of the programme or the choice of speakers, but they've provided monies used towards the cost of the webinar licence, administration, and to making a professionally edited recording available on our website. Next, I'd like to welcome our speakers. Professor David Alsop, who is the Senior Lecturer in Haematology at the Hull and East Yorkshire Hospitals, Dr. Talha Munir, who's a consultant in clinical haematology at the University of Leeds and is a principal investor in the FLAIR and STATIC trial. David's also on the trial management group for the trials. And we've got Doina Levint, who's a senior trial manager from the University of Leeds. And Doina took up her role relatively recently, so we particularly want to say welcome to her. We're delighted to see you today. I'm Hilary Lindsay. I'm the chair of CLL Support, but I'm also here today as a patient representative on the trial management group of STATIC, so I'll be speaking a little bit about that later on.
Thank you very much, Hilary. Thank you very much, CLL Support Group, for asking us to come back, and thank you all for joining in and making time to join us so that we can give you some update on the trials that we are running from UK at the moment. So this is just to provide an update on FLAIR and STATIC trial. And in terms of, I'm just going to talk about FLAIR in the first place and update the results that we presented recently at the European Society of Hematology meeting. And then I will hand it over to my colleague, Professor Alsop, to take you through some of the STATIC trial updates and what changes are being made, have been made in the protocol now for that trial. And then Doina is going to take you through which sites are open for STATIC and where we are with recruitment at this moment in time. And then Hilary will take it forward from there and do her session. In terms of, I've already gone through some of this, but the recent progress in CLL therapy is amazing because there are lots of new treatments that have been licensed for use. And hopefully the trials that we've conducted in the UK may help us to deliver those treatments to our patients as well. And I'm going to provide the clinical update. So in terms of who are we, I'm Talha Munir. I'm a hematology consultant. I work at St. James's Hospital in Leeds. Been working here since 2014, and I'm the deputy chair of the UK CLL subgroup. And I'm the chief investigator of both FLAIR and STATIC trial. I've taken over the role from Professor Peter Hillman. And I'm the member of the UK CLL Forum and the European Consortium as well. And I work in the University of Leeds and run the trial from there. My colleague, Professor Alsop, is a professor of hematology at Hull York Medical School, and he also works in the clinical capacity at the Castle Hill Hospital in Hull. And he's a very active member, TMG member, which is the Trial Management Group meeting. Group member of the FLAIR and STATIC trial, so he's very well versed with what's happening with the trial and help us to further the trial in a positive way. I'm just going to talk you through the FLAIR trial because this trial has been going on in the UK for since 2014. So if you the trial has been adapted over a number of years. Because the treatment of CLL has changed over a number of years as well. So in the top part of the trial, the first part of the trial was looking at the question whether treatment with ibrutinib and rituximab, which was given over 6 years, is better as compared to chemotherapy, which was given in the form of FCR, and that was the first part of the trial. Right in the midst of the trial, we had a lot of changes, and we knew then that the treatment for CLL will change again. So we included 2 arms in 2017, and one was ibrutinib on its own, and patients will take the drug as long as it is working for up to 6 years. And then the other arm, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, is the combination of ibrutinib with venetoclax treatment. And we delivered it in a very different way to how it is being delivered. It's called the MRD-driven way, defined way of giving this therapy. And there are a number of endpoints that we have to highlight when we are presenting this data to the regulators. And some of those are highlighted in terms of comparisons that have been already published. There is some data which is still being collected at this moment in time, and hopefully we will be able to publish that in the near future. So this is the data that we recently presented. So 786 participants were randomized, and the randomization process is completely out of our hands. So the computer decides which treatment is given to an individual participant. And we had a split of 263 patients receiving chemotherapy with rituximab, which is an immunotherapy. And that was the standard arm of the trial. And the treatment was given for 6 cycles. And then 263 patients got ibrutinib. And then another 260 patients got ibrutinib with venetoclax. Now, the ibrutinib and venetoclax treated patients had a test called MRD, and MRD stands for minimal residual disease, and it means that we are picking up a very small amount of disease in the blood. So we do a very sensitive test in the laboratory, and we can pick up 1 in 10,000 CLL cells, 1 in 10,000, 1 CLL cells in 10,000 leukocytes, or the white cells. And if we are unable to pick that up, then we say this word that we can't, it's a MRD negative result. And what the implication of that was that we were able to assess some patients needed 2 years of therapy, some patients needed 3 years of therapy, and some patients needed 4 and up to a maximum of 6 years of therapy. So as a result of that, for individual patient participant, the treatment was individualized depending on how good the response based on MRD was. And then we compared the results as compared to the other arms of the trial. So it is a bit complicated, but it is how the trial was designed to give the treatment which was adapted on the MRD response. So the primary objective was that we were comparing that if we give ibrutinib and venetoclax in this way, is this better than the chemotherapy, the chemoimmunotherapy? If we keep clicking, if that's okay. And then also we were looking at whether this combination give superior MRD result. And in one of the secondary objectives on this trial was that is ibrutinib with venetoclax better than ibrutinib on its own in preventing progression of disease and overall survival. So this is the data that we presented. So it's a complicated diagram again, but this is what we call as the Kaplan-Meier curves. And if you look at the graphs, there is on the x-axis, there's the number of months that the follow-up is going on for. And then on the y-axis is how many patients are disease-free at individual time point. So we have got a median follow-up. That means half of the patients have reached 62.2 months. And what we find at this point is that patients who got ibrutinib venetoclax, which is the blue curve, are doing the best. And the 94% of the participants are still disease-free, and that is as compared to around 79% with ibrutinib and 58% with FCR. And if we look at the statistical analysis, it is this combination is superior to both ibrutinib and FCR treatment. There's something we call as obviously overall survival, and this is what we want to get better for all our patients. And we were surprised to see that actually when we give this combination, the ibrutinib venetoclax patients are doing the best as well. And this was also statistically significant as compared to FCR. And that again was a bit surprising, because sometimes we don't see this survival advantage that early on in the studies as well. So when we looked at some of the other data, we found that in CLL patients, there are two kind of diseases that we're looking at. One is a low-grade disease, which is called the mutated IgHV disease, and there is one which is called unmutated IgHV disease, which is a bit more aggressive. And when we give ibrutinib venetoclax in this way to unmutated patients, those are the patients who are benefiting the most from this therapy. And the other message that we got across from the study now is that, as if you can remember that I said it's between 2 to 6 years of therapy, the best responses we saw were to give therapy for 2 or 3 years. After 3 years of therapy, continuing further treatment did not yield any more productive outputs. So the best responses were in the first 2 years or first 3 years of therapy. So the gains were are less after that, with further extension of further ibrutinib and venetoclax. So that takes us to the next question, really. What is available for UK CLL patients? So if you were to need treatment tomorrow, what is available on NHS? And there are some guidelines which are available, but there are two main ways how we are delivering treatment to our patients. There is these drugs called BTK inhibitors, including acalabrutinib and zanubrutinib, and they're given continuously as long as it is working for our patients. Or patients can have this treatment called venetoclax with the obinutuzumab, which is given for 12 cycles. And essentially everybody would stop at 12 cycles. And the same combination, ibrutinib with venetoclax, is available on an NHS, but only given for 15 cycles, which means 15 months of treatment. So if you look at FLAIR protocol, we are giving longer treatment with ibrutinib venetoclax. We believe that probably 2 or 3 years of therapy is better as compared to just 15 months of therapy, and especially in the patients who've got this unmutated IgHV status. So the job for us, as we have shown the data, the clinical data, we can conclude that we can deliver this treatment, and we were able to do that in FLAIR for 2 to 6 years. This is much longer than approved indication, which is 15 months. And one of the main challenges, once we show that clinical effectiveness is there, and I think we've proven that with this update, that this combination given in this way is more effective than ibrutinib and FCR. I think that question we can answer, but there is a big question around cost effectiveness, which means that if we are to give longer ibrutinib venetoclax, say for 2 or 3 years, would this be cost effective for NHS in the long run? And this is something what we call as cost benefit analysis. And it's our job now to provide that data to the regulators, which is NICE in UK, to see that if this is a cost benefit to NHS in the long run, then we would be hopeful that NICE approves this for patients in UK. But there is quite a lot of data that we need to provide them in order to look at that data and look at the question whether this would be available for our patients. And this is something that we're working on. We do feel that we are getting some patients into very, very deep responses. And there is a question about whether there is a possibility of functional cure in some patients, but that data we will only be able to substantiate once we have got the long-term follow-up. And some of the next work we're doing is to follow up the data for up to 10 years on this trial. At the moment, the trial finishes at 7 years follow-up, but we are hopeful that we will be able to get some more funding to keep the trial open for up to 10 years so that we can get the long-term data. And I think in terms of where we stand at this moment in time with this trial, we will only be able to get this through for funding streams with the help of the groups like the CLL Support group, the Leukemia Care, and your input into it, because the patient groups' views and patients' views are very important in terms of getting approvals for these molecules. And as these drugs are already approved, I think the main question now is what is the right duration of treatment for a certain group of patients. And hopefully we would be able to convince the funders, but this takes time. And we are working on that data as quickly as possible. So I'll stop there and I'll hand over to my colleague David to take you through STATIC trial, and he's going to provide an update on this trial as well.